Yep. Pleasure to be here. Excited to introduce our latest innovation product that we think is really going to help solidify security within the B2B payments realm. And we call it Finexio Shield. I think I'll kick things off, and then Ernest and I will sort of jump in as we go. But Finexio, for those of you that don't know, is about 9 years old at this point. And we've seen a lot over the years, helping AP teams, helping procure to pay, different software companies, and CFOs really deal with B2B payments, specifically around accounts payable. And what we've noticed, along with a lot of industry leaders, such as JP Morgan, AFP, et cetera, there's significant amount of fraud out in the marketplace, and they're just evolving quicker and quicker. Some of that's thanks to things like ChatGPT and AI, where it's significantly easier than it was in the past to create a very sophisticated sort of looking fraud scheme. So some of the things we see, unfortunately, probably a lot of you see, are things like malware, stealing login credentials, business email compromise. We'll touch on this one a little bit more as we walk through the presentation. But again, it's still the #1 way for fraudsters to try and defraud your company and your team. And it's getting, again, increasingly sophisticated in terms of being able to reproduce very credible looking emails, websites, et cetera. There's always been, just weaknesses within the payment system. Of course, we've all heard about checks, check washing, stealing checks, straight out of the USPS mail, delivery truck. But certainly ACHs too have weaknesses as well. And some of what we've done with Shield is really designed to help sort of protect our customers against that. And then obviously the digital transactions continually increase year over year, and that's one of the goals of Finexio, is to increase digital transactions, get out of the paper-based realm. Because any study will show you, AFP they come out with a report every year. Will show you checks are still the #1 fraud vector in terms of quantity. It's old school check fraud. So what we're trying to do is, help push the industry forward, of course, get off paper, but then make sure that those electronic payments are just as safe as possible. So just a couple of stats that I think, really are worth noting. And again, this is representative of, I think, a lot of our customer base. I gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago in Chicago. Asked folks to raise their hand in terms of which companies had experienced some type of fraud. 80% is sort of the number that's out there. And we actually think, Finexio is closer to 100%, just not everybody reports, just like not everybody votes. And average transaction size, average cost per incident, you're looking at about $150,000 per incident. And again, that's just an average. It can be vastly higher, sometimes less. But I think regardless, and this is one of the things we've seen and our customers have been asking for, is they don't want to have to worry about it at all. It's burdensome to try to recover anything. It takes a lot of time, resources, especially if you're going to try and file an insurance claim. It can disrupt your supply chain and your operations. You can have reputational damage, harm, with your suppliers, especially if they're not getting paid. Because ultimately they may not care if you were the victim of fraud or business email compromise. So it's a very real issue, and unfortunately it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So a couple of things that we see, and we really want to make sure that we touch on, because we work ultimately a lot with AP teams, or the software companies that work directly with AP teams and procurement, they're just not really equipped or experienced to deal with fraud in this new digital age. Typically, what you're going to see is a lot of manual processes. So if you think about what an AP team is actually hired to do, right? It's more of an accounting function. But now they're also being asked to sort of be the front line of defense for your organization to help prevent fraud. This typically involves a lot of manual supplier callbacks, verifying certain aspects or not. I think that's the other thing to touch on. Many organizations don't have a robust fraud prevention strategy, which can, is only going to hurt those organizations in the long run. But either way, it tends to be very time consuming, a lot of manual approvals, manual processes, emails back and forth, but, again, potentially phone calls, which just aren't efficient and actually aren't that secure. And then on the flip side, while there are tools in place today, I think we've all heard about positive pay with checks. Check washing is still a thing, right? Positive pay is not a panacea, certainly for anything as it relates to checks. And then while there are blocks, filters, you can use other types of tools to help prevent ACH fraud and wire fraud. None of those are foolproof. You can see it in the numbers and the stats. Again, AFP is a great report. There's links to it, within this presentation. And those are, fairly easily compromised by fraudsters. And so what it really begs is, if you don't have a robust process, educated team, people, and technology, you're going to be left exposed. So I'll jump through one other slide here, and I'll turn it over to Ernest for a bit. But we really don't think, and just on our observations, AP teams should be handling fraud prevention. At Finexio, fraud prevention is an entire team. This is all they do. They're not distracted by other work. Their entire goal is to prevent fraud, mitigate fraud, and deal with fraud if and when it happens. And I think what's important to note is the susceptibility to an AP team with all these modern fraud techniques is only ever present. It's growing. We actually did a podcast not that long ago about the democratization of technology and its ability to enable fraudsters, again, to do very sophisticated fraud attacks on organizations really of any size. I think one of the other things we've seen as well is this false sense of security. So there's this sort of implicit trust bias that we see in AP teams and finance teams thinking, hey, I know that supplier. I talk to them all the time, or yep, that email came from them. And we've seen time and time again where it actually wasn't from that supplier. It looked like it was from that supplier, but if you look closely at the email, they may have spoofed the email, added an S at the end, any number of ways where the bad guys sort of know that you have this implicit trust bias with your suppliers, and so you may not be as diligent as you need to be. And really, Finexio position is you need to be extremely diligent all the time. There cannot be a lapse. Can't be late on a Friday and you want to go home and you need to make that payment. It really needs to be ever present to ensure you're not sending money to the wrong place. And then obviously, getting distracted from core responsibilities. I think most, CFOs and AP teams aren't hired to manage fraud. That's just not their job. So of course, you're going to see reduced efficiency, potential errors because you're distracted. There's a lot of time it takes to interact with suppliers, make sure that who you're talking to the best of your ability. And then, finally, if and when fraud does happen, and if you look at the stats that we presented earlier, it's happening to just about every organization out there. Most organizations don't have the wherewithal, the expertise, and the tools to really manage fraud incidents effectively, right? And that starts with even identifying fraud and understanding what happened to, a full root cause analysis, and then, hopefully recovering some of the funds. But what we've seen is most organizations just aren't well equipped to do that efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, it's really is the problem set that Chris is really talking about here. I think it's clear is really beyond a human scale, right? And requires technology, requires automation. And so at Finexio, we thought a lot about how we've applied that technology, artificial intelligence, automation in determining how to deliver and manage payments. We've extended that throughout the life cycle through to payment settlement to provide that ultimate peace of mind to clients and not introduce any burden to the AP team. I mean, we've been listening and meeting with our customers and our partners, which collectively our partners represent 375 billion of total spend across the US. These are the things that we heard them and their customers and the AP teams really care about and are looking for technology solutions to help resolve in and around that journey to get to check zero. And it involves the automation and the vetting and changing around supplier information, not just the identities of those suppliers, but also the validity of those bank accounts and the matching of those bank accounts to those suppliers, right? Leveraging software in the cloud to avoid having the financial back office staff do that work by hand, shifting the burden to the suppliers to sign up, to prove that they are who they say they are, to prove that they can validate the information. because that is when the risk is actually coming. The risk isn't coming the first time you're running into somebody, and we keep and check that too and make sure that's secure. It's really in the paper shuffle. It's in the changing. And that's when you get to beyond the scale. So being able to provide the efficiency of that and the security. But again, going back to Chris's point, if you think that, or you think your clients are also the fraud prevention team and not the team whose task it is to approve and manage payments, you're sorely mistaken. You've lost. And it's a battle that, again, the fraudsters can be fighting at 1,000 miles an hour versus the AP team that is really struggling to deal with the 70% of invoices that are still unfortunately paper in the United States. So what we've brought to the table here are several core pillars, and it's around a comprehensive fraud protection framework for payments that involves advanced fraud detection, right? That's as payments are being processed in real time with real-time monitoring alerts through a number of technologies Finexio has deployed, as well as our banking and payment processing partners bring to the table to help assist in real-time identity verification, OFAC and AML checking, and business continuity, providing payment methods that are simply more secure, right? Things above and beyond, say, a regular ACH, like a card that is very, very low ability for fraud, driving payments to suppliers that have already been vetting and recurring vetting those suppliers. And again, at every point of interaction with those suppliers, having the audit trail of the vigorous checking, monitoring for velocity, monitoring for frequency, having that robust data in place. And that is what allows us to be able to provide a guarantee against fraud up to a significant dollar amount across payments through our network to suppliers that have been vetted and properly managed by our people, process, and technology that work seamlessly together to provide such a comprehensive answer here. So at Finexio, all of our customers have since day one enjoyed best-in-class security. It is truly bank level. Finexio, when we were starting the company 9 years ago, knew that we would need to be serving and working with the largest banks in the country, as well as some of the largest institutions. We are a major player in the public sector higher education space, for instance, working with governmental type entities that, again, need and have these level of requirements, but don't know where to procure it, don't know how to deliver it. And so they're in a very difficult position. So we've been, over the years, continuing to invest in areas around unauthorized access, risk and compliance, network and data security, but combining that and delivering it in a way that is seamless to the payment enablement experience, the payment delivery experience, and the supplier experience in a way where friction is introduced only in the right steps, and additional manual work is leveraged where the APIs and the technology is driving the alerts in a way. So that, again, we can have a very high scaling, highly effective solution that will be truly not only best in class, but solves the beyond people conundrum that we've been talking about, where only technology can apply. And that's what we're really proud of. So I think clients really want payments, and they want to eliminate paper checks, which, as Chris mentioned, has the highest rate of fraud and is just really a disaster from a fraud standpoint. But you need to think about the service. Clients will come for the payments, corporates will come for the payments, CFOs need payments made safely, securely, on time. But what clients stay and where clients value is they want the service, right? They want that preventative, thoughtful service, and that the payments then become, just like Shield, we think, the cherry on top of the experience. You have a great autonomous accounts payable payment function that can drive while you're at home sleeping and soundly secure, knowing that the payments are safe.
Yep. So, a few ways that we do this, and Ernest mentioned it, it's really around the people, process, and technology. And if you don't have all three, you don't have anything. So I think, that's important to keep in mind. It's not just, this isn't just a technology play. We plugged into something and we think we're safe now. It's really, for us, when Finexio designed this, it was getting the right people in the right seats at first. So you know you have somebody who's going to be accountable, or a whole team that's accountable, starting to define the processes that exist today, and then the processes you want to exist in the future, and then layering in the technology that is appropriate to facilitate the processes that you want, that are auditable, that are bank level or better. And so when we think about it, yes, there's real-time fraud detection and prevention. Finexio does leverage AI on multiple fronts to be constantly looking for, again, I think Ernest mentioned it, some anomalous behavior. Hey, you change your bank account, 4 times in the last week. That's weird. Nobody does that. We need to flag that and send that for manual review. Comprehensive vendor validation. So this is everything from bank account validation, making sure the name on the bank account is validated, making sure the IRS, can validate a tax ID, things such as, as this, just to give you a few ideas in terms of what we mean there. Standard sort of, enhanced compliance monitoring. So, we certainly have a duty, as do all banks, certainly in the US, to make sure you're not paying terrorists, bad guys, right? And so that typically falls under what's called OFAC and anti-money laundering. Of course, you get that, with Finexio's solution. And then the ongoing dynamic risk management, right? And this is really where, the people and processes that we've put in place are constantly evolving. We're constantly looking for, hey, what's happening out in the marketplace? What are our customers seeing? Because unfortunately, bad guys, try to perpetrate fraud all day long. We see it. Occasionally we see some checks that are stolen out of the mail. And so how do we help deal with that? How do we identify, potential problems and come up with solutions to help prevent, things that are happening now and or in the future? So I think collectively that really becomes the solution in terms of, how, what we've called Finexio Shield really works. It starts on, sort of being prepared, right? This is everything from, validating services, right? Leveraging technology. We've listed a few of our partners here that we're, proud to work with, having that third-party immutable, auditable trail, leveraging bank level security, literally the same technology banks use to vet suppliers, make sure they don't feel that fraud's going on. We're able to leverage, very similar, if not the exact same tools. Things like knowledge-based authentication. If we don't know you, asking for, what card did you have, 10 years ago, or validating actually, biometrically and or using your ID as an example. And then we have the whole notion of in-flight payments. I think this is one of the key things that differentiates us from most players out in the space is we're actually moving the money. And so we're not just vetting the suppliers to make sure, hey, they look like they're okay. We're actually then validating the money movement as it happens in real time. We have the ability to stop payments if we believe there's an issue, if we think there's some type of fraud. We're actually able to stop that, and then have our fraud team investigate it as appropriate with our banking partners. And ideally, that's going to stop 99+% of any potential fraud. But I think, as Ernest mentioned, what we're able to also now offer, because our processes have not only been sort of built, but also validated by external insurance companies, third parties, is that we're actually able to provide loss prevention. So in the event that there is a loss and Finexio's technically on the hook, we should have caught it, you're covered, right? So you have that peace of mind. We don't think it's going to happen, but in the case that it ever does, it's one more way, our customers can sort of have that peace of mind and know that there's nothing that they're going to need to worry about.
We think that's huge because to Finexio's knowledge, there is no payments company in the United States that is willing to put their neck out there for this. It is always on the customer, and that's certainly how Finexio has operated. And after years of managing this, driving the audits, driving and managing to zero losses, we're comfortable, one, being transparent and sharing everything we're doing, but providing clients with the option to have complete protection. It's very powerful.
So we've got, we work with a lot of companies, a lot of, mid-market enterprise customers, be they channel partners or direct customers. We love Stephen Krieger over at CFO over at Vicon Construction. And I think one of the, key things he points out is, yes, the payments are, great. We're able to manage all that on their behalf, reduces a lot of administrative burden, but it's also the security that, that comes with that. When we're very proud that, Stephen and, the whole Vicon team sees value in that. Our goal is really to bring that to all of our customers to make sure that they feel safe, they feel protected, and they actually are.
On Finexio Shield, we think this is transformative from a fraud standpoint. Firstly, the AP team, we have to get them focused on being strategic, on doing more with less. There's not a CFO, there's not a corporate I know out of the hundreds and hundreds of clients that are leveraging Finexio. There's not one that is putting more investment into bodies in their accounts payable department. In fact, we're in a growing and expanding economy. Their payments volume, their transactions, their value is only increasing. The teams are stressed and overworked, and in fact, that's why these clients have come to Finexio, because they are looking for and with us gaining the relief, we are continuing to deliver on that promise by lessening the burden. Two, driving to less checks. Everybody wants less checks. Certain customers are less aggressive on pushing for no checks. We'll continue to educate our clients, partners in the market on why checks are really a bad idea for a variety of reasons. But with electronic payments, when you do see fraud, it is on ACHs. It is on ACH fraud. And again, the AP staff member that's getting called up by that sophisticated actor pretending to be Dell Computer and giving a new bank account, when you're not able to verify a number of items, it's going to be very, very difficult to do that, where it's just over the phone. And the vast majority of businesses out there are just relying on the phone or email, which can get you into a lot of trouble, right? It's also, I think, a competitive edge for customers and partners to drive suppliers to adopt electronic payments by giving them the peace of mind that the payments to them are secure, that the company that they're doing business with and vending services to thinks enough of them and takes enough of care of their stakeholders to drive efficient, regular, and timely payments to people that they know. Frankly, you cannot provide any of what I just said if you're sending that payment in the mail. It may never get there at all. And frankly, far too much, it just doesn't. And lastly, it's the peace of mind of one, being a good stakeholder for the business, for the clients that use the service, but keeping your name out of the newspaper as well. It takes many, many years. Some of our clients have been around for 50 plus, even around 100 years, and they've built those reputations over many years. It takes just a matter of minutes to lose that reputation. Certainly with a key supplier that was expecting a payment to run payroll that is not actually coming due to certain grave errors around this. So we want to drive the future around security and payments all in, and we think we've really done that here, listening to what again, not only what the customers and partners are saying they're looking for, but again, the nearly 300,000 suppliers we've paid tell us as well they're looking for the same. They want that peace of mind. They want the security.
So, real briefly, how does this work for new customers, existing customers? The good news is it's easy. It seamlessly connects into what we're doing today. So that's the beauty of what we've tried to do. Make it very low friction, little education. Because again, I think one of the sort of mind shifts and behavioral shifts, which is really the only thing, is rather than our customers, those AP teams, thinking that they're the ones that should be the front line for vetting the suppliers. Send them to us. Send the supplier through our process. It's online. It's easy. Unless there's something that is anomalous, they're going to fly through, and we're going to have, again, that independent third party, validated, auditable record that you can rely on. We can rely on, and you don't have to worry about this anymore. That's really the goal. So that's why we built, again, people, process, technology, building the system that handles all this. And again, Finexio is here to support our customers throughout the entire life cycle. Again, hopefully nothing ever goes bad, but if it does, we're there to support it. And so good news is very simple to get started. We're super excited about being able to offer this, and we're eager to introduce this to a much broader audience. Good.
The time to act around this is now. If you're a channel partner, if you're thinking about selling payments, if you're reselling payments, this is something your customers are looking for and buying from other vendors already today. If you're working with Finexio, this is an instant add-on that you can have to protect your book of business, add more value to your customers, and grow and expand your share of wallet. If you're a corporate or a bank or someone with corporates, again, same thing. It's an imperative to help these customers, even if it's not your responsibility. If you can help save a client hundreds of thousands of dollars on average, you're golden with that customer for quite a while, right? We're delivering something that seamlessly works with what we're doing today. Our teams are already doing these validations with suppliers on a consistent, repeatable basis. We're driving dedicated support around this from the fraud side and customer support side to help drive the scale. And we've been working with clients hand in glove to curate custom strategies on communication around fraud and around conversion to payments that have low fraud susceptibility around check, off of check to card, I should say, to help drive that and have a very strong message on a business imperative. And I think it's not far long before clients are going to start charging suppliers to send them a check in the mail. The average cost of sending a check today costs our clients $8 to send a check manually by hand before they get into Finexio. So that's quite the financial burden. And lastly, again, is to avoid the devastating damages this can have. Just one attack is one attack too many. And we're seeing the attempts and we're seeing them. And the good news is we're stopping them. Do you have that data? Do your clients have that data to go and track that? We do. And we'd be happy to share it.
Yeah. So with that, we'll wrap it up here. And, I think we'll take some Q&A if we have some questions. But again, the idea is eliminate the risk, be a lot more secure with efficient payments, really unburden the team. Let those AP teams do what they're supposed to do, what they do best. That's really our goal. So we've got some contact information there. Please reach out. You can also visit the website. We've got a dedicated page just to Shield. But we'll love to, I think, entertain any questions we have.
Okay, thanks, Chris and Ernest. And yes, we do have questions. While we're going through them, if you have other questions, add them in. We'll see how many we can get through. The first one that looks like the right place to start is, when does Finexio Shield begin?
You want to take it?
Well, I think there's a few ways to interpret that question. I think when Finexio Shield begins is the minute we start engaging with the suppliers. Chris said that. Finexio is in the supplier enablement business of helping to educate, train, adopt, sell, convince, negotiate with suppliers stuff. But we are in the recurring supplier management business for all of our clients today, driving the continued identification, monitoring, and customer service, and critical to fraud, the change management process around suppliers. Customers can and do choose to go around that. Customers that do go around our processes cannot be protected as closely and securely as we can. So we believe in choice and we believe in low friction at Finexio. So Finexio Shield is all about following the current processes that we have that are highly repeatable, auditable, insured, and driven by technology, and just engaging and keeping that as one consistent process. So it starts as soon as you start working with Finexio, candidly, and the product service itself is for general release and availability as we speak. So we're pleased to announce that to the broader market.
Okay. On day one, after signing up for Finexio Shield, are all my suppliers covered?
Yeah, I can take that. Well, I think to Ernest's point earlier, the answer is no. And that's because we need to make sure we know who we're dealing with. So in many cases, again, we try to be low friction, and we do enable our customers to submit payments as they see fit, very similar to if you said, hey, I need to send $10,000 check to ABC Co. We're happy to send that for you. But that doesn't mean we've vetted that supplier. We've run them through our process. We've asked the supplier some very specific questions. So, in that type of an instance, that supplier is not covered, right? So think about eligible suppliers, eligible payments. And the idea is we want to have the opportunity to run that through supplier, through our process, again, which takes a matter of minutes to, get comfortable with them, have that auditable trail so we can identify, yep, the supplier is in good standing. They have an established relationship with, one of our customers, and everything checks out. So the whole idea is we need the ability to vet that supplier, make sure that we're comfortable so that you can be comfortable. So it's not every supplier, it's the suppliers that we're able to funnel through our network. And unfortunately, it doesn't cover checks. I think as Ernest mentioned earlier, checks are sort of an anathema. It's very hard to get everybody off of checks, but we're doing our very best. And we actually think, Finexio Shield, along with our virtual card solutions, should really help push organizations to almost, refuse to send checks, or Ernest even said, pay, have the suppliers pay to receive a check. They're just not an efficient payment mechanism, and they are extremely prone to fraud. So happy to delve in more with anybody that's interested in terms of how this works. But we cover as many of the suppliers and payments as possible. But again, think about it. It's more, we have to have that ability to go in and vet that supplier to make sure they're on the up and up.
Okay, thank you. For new subscribing customers in the future, are Finexio services offered in 2 tiers, with and without Shield, or is it priced into all new subscriptions?
You want to take?
We will for new customers. Eventually, it will be included into the total price and cost of the subscription. So that's not, there won't be a point of friction there. It'd be very, very, very simple to purchase and understand what it is and engage.
Okay.
But that's good. That's some buying interest there. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Will there be a need for a contract amendment, or is there a separate agreement?
There is. Yep. It's very simple though for any existing customer. It's literally just a simple addendum, very short and sweet. We try to keep it very clean. So yes, there's some contractual language around this. I mean, we're signing up to effectively take on that liability and that burden. So yes, there's a little bit of contractual legalese that we will ask you to run through.
Read carefully and work to drive processes to follow the letter of the law, so that we can drive the delivery of zero fraud that we know that we can. And if we follow a certain process and drive suppliers to follow a process and drive the accounts payable team to follow a process, you will have no fraud. It is very simple. And really, I think what it takes, understanding what's required, which is not burdensome, by the way. Most companies out there are still sending checks. And so it's really a matter of courage, I would say. We have some clients that are paperless and they've decided to be paperless. That is in the minority. And I will say, on the record, there is, apart from, say, some government payments, some local tax authorities, there is very, very few categories of businesses that cannot take an electronic payment. If you're sending a check today as a business, it is 100% your choice for 98% of the time. And checks are declining. We still see about 30% of our payment volume going out as paper checks, which is sad. So we're driving everything we can to make it easier and easier to allow the CFOs, to allow partners to step up and have the courage to say, we will not do any more checks, and here's why.
Okay, great. I'm going to combine a couple of questions into one. Is what specifically does a client need to do to ensure their payments are covered? The nuts and bolts, is it possible to review the Finexio Shield agreement to see the details?
Yeah, of course. Our account management team and our sales team will of course walk you through sort of all the details, sort of every step of the way, make sure that it's very clear in terms of, what's covered, what's not covered, why. Because ultimately we do think, I think as Ernest mentioned, right, we don't want checks. We think to a degree, this is a bit of a behavioral change. So it's not only just looking at the contractual language, but there's also the education piece, for those AP teams and the back office, staff of the CFO and the finance teams, is helping them understand, hey, you don't have to be the one vetting these suppliers anymore. So helping to really shift that mindset into, hey, we're not going to be vetting this for you. Thanks for sending us, that updated information on your bank account, Mr. Supplier, but I need you to go over here complete this process. Doesn't take long. So we'll walk you through every step of the way, is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, our contact information is here. Contact Chris or myself, Mark, and we'll be able to not only step you through even more detailed slide, or our account management team, if you have a contact here or a client of ours already, detailed step-by-step walkthrough of what the vetting, validation processes are, requirements for getting information, managing it. The nice thing is we will continue to allow exceptions to the process to satisfy our customers and our suppliers as we do today. We realize one size does not fit all. We do have a silver bullet here in a certain regard, but that silver bullet will not work for all the enemies. So we do have exception workflows and use cases, and in those exceptions, they can't be covered. But we have to let commerce flow. We have to let suppliers pay, and we have to follow what customers want to do. It's a customer's choice ultimately, how safe and secure they want to be, and so we will honor that just as we do today.
On the how it works slide, on how it works the coverage, I don't know if you want to go back, Chris, to see that. Does Finexio pay if funds are not recovered?
If Finexio's deemed liable, that's the whole point of Shield. Is if we put in the people process technology as we mentioned.
Yes.
But ultimately, yes, if we're deemed we didn't do our job that we promised to do, yeah. And you'll have that coverage.
Okay. And is there an indemnification clause in the agreement?
Well, I think sort of rather than get into the nitty-gritty of the actual agreement, we can just walk you through it, right? Well, anybody that's interested, we'll walk you through it. You guys can read it. You can have your legal read it. So you can see exactly what's covered, how, when, etc.
Okay, and the other one we talked about a little bit, but I think it's worth exploring in the last 5 minutes is, we've got another question here. Coverage for a fraud case, any dollar limit?
The initial dollar limit we're discussing here is $1 million, and we'll be happy to discuss with clients and partners various use cases beyond that.
Yeah, well, what we've seen, we didn't make this number up out of thin air, but that covers the absolute vast majority, a couple standard deviations out of all payments that Finexio manages.
Yeah.
So we think it's a very good number. It's a safe number. But yeah, as Ernest said, if there needs to be special consideration, let's have those conversations.
We're happy to look at it. We're a very data-driven organization, and we did share some statistics earlier that are referenceable in the beginning of the slide here, slide 8. A quick Google search will provide you with at least 8 other referenceable points that are quotable, that are backed up by several various public data sources, all in that same range of loss on average. But the average commercial payment is $2,500 in the United States, also backed up by data. That is also, I'll share some proprietary Finexio stats. That's also the Finexio average transaction size is $2,500 across many billions of spend. So we believe we're providing coverage that it would be far beyond and above the average around what we're seeing.
All right, last question.
Great question. Custom needs may require custom solutioning and custom problems, but I don't think anyone's expecting to lose more than that.
We certainly hope not.
We hope not.
Okay, last question, and thank you. What happens about our suppliers that are on check?
Well, look, and I think as Ernest mentioned, we have an entire team that is trying to convert those suppliers off of check. And unfortunately, the check suppliers aren't covered. And that's simply because there isn't a great vetting process to, vet. There's like really not a process you can put in place outside of, yes, we can make sure we're not sending, payments to, a jail, a prison, to, a known terrorist organization. But it's very difficult. And this is why, the check problem persists. And we're really recommending, I think, as Ernest mentioned, if you have that courage to just basically insist that your suppliers don't have check as an option. Because there's very little, Finexio can do, the banking world as a whole can do to really, do a lot about check fraud. So checks are going to be available to you if you want to leverage them. Of course, we will send checks for you, and there is some preliminary screening that we do, but just because of the nature of the check, it's almost impossible to cover.
If there's fraud, unfortunately, it's a chase situation, and working with the number of combinations of, there's more than 3,500 banks in the United States that all don't have similar anti-fraud processes or standards that our team can go and follow up on. We have a very good recovery rate when and if that does occur, and these things are flagged due to the fraud prevention items that are in place at the time, but it's a chasing scenario. So what we think and what we will advise clients on is to collaborate with us on net new communications and new campaigns to their suppliers to drive them off of check and get them to something that, again, is predictable, repeatable, can give them surety of their payment, give them safety of their payment. The alternative is to advise clients to pay the suppliers on checks slower. And they're already getting paid slower on checks. So what's another several weeks of waiting, right? If you can get paid electronically in days. And again, that's a choice the supplier has to make as well. But if you're on checks today, you're signing up for a solution that just may never get there, and on average is taking 10 days with US mail.
Well, thank you very much, Ernest and Chris. Could you just go to the contact slide again at the end?
Absolutely.
So we're at time, but want to point out to please reach out, make note, Ernest, Chris, or Mark Elliott, and also go into finexio.com/shield to find out this information. And also you can press a button to connect to a consultation with Finexio. Thank you all very much for today.
Thank you so much. We'd love to hear from you. Appreciate the interest.
Thanks.